Our next speaker this morning is Neil Capel. He's the CEO and founder of Sailthrough, a technology and behavioral analytics company which began in 2008. And he's an entrepreneur and an engineer at heart, I think. Many of the leading publisher and e-commerce brands depend on Sailthrough to use customer data to extend their subscribers' lifetime and engagement and actually increase page throughs and drive clicks. So it's safe to say that Neil is not a stranger to data, especially big data. And today he'll be sharing with us some of his insights on how competitive carriers can use data to build customer loyalty, and how the mobile platform is changing new customers' demands, and where he may think mobile may actually enhance the customer experience. He was also named as one of the top 100 from the Silicon Valley publications, one of the top 100 influential technology leaders in New York City, which I thought was quite unusual. And New York City, you don't think of Silicon Valley in New York, but I think it works, right? So welcome. Thank you, Neil, for coming and sharing with us today.
Good morning, everyone. So when I was asked to come and speak at this conference, I kind of thought, well, what can I tell everyone that can leave them with ideas about how they can remain competitive, grow their businesses, and continue to evolve their businesses out? And I thought, well, how am I going to do that? I look at what we do for our customers, and we have a very unique view of what our customers are doing with their customers, because we provide a marketing platform that really enables them to reach the consumer on a one-to-one level. And I wanted to say, okay, well, if I can educate you in understanding the consumer, then you can go out and actually understand the consumer more so that you can know how to build out the business and build around that consumer. So to jump right in, I think we can all agree that consumer demand for mobile data is increasing massively. In fact, it's actually grown by 18,000%. I mean, that's one hell of a number. I love that number. I'd love to be able to say that was our revenue number. But it's a massive increase in consumer demand for mobile data. It just continues to increase. We know it's going to increase. I'm sure we've been talking about it a lot this conference. But really, hello? Let's try that again. There we go. So the consumers are much more, more connected consumers, right? So if you look at the blue line, you have the consumers who access the mobile internet at least more than once a month. And it's massively increased, along with the smartphone ownership in the US. Expected in 2012, 53% of mobile users will have smartphones. And you can really see the uptick is happening in the last 2 years, right? And so it's a massive uptick. This is where it's going. In fact, I'd love to know, and this is a very skewed audience, but is there anyone in the audience that doesn't actually have a smartphone? Don't be shy, because it would be interesting. I'm sure there's one person that's actually decided, I don't want a smartphone because I don't want to have to answer email when I'm on the go. All right. I think this is a skewed audience, but if you look at it, that in the next 5 years, everybody is going to have a smartphone. It's not, smartphone becomes something, it's just a phone. You have dumb phones for those, the old style phones, but everyone in the next 5 years will have a smartphone. And that's where we're going with the sort of the mobile aspect of everything. If you think about that, I mean, when you look at mobile data and mobile applications, everyone says, well, we've got web, we've got mobile, we've got desktop, all that kind of stuff. I mean, this is my PC. It's a MacBook Air, it's tiny. When does this become mobile? I mean, this is essentially an iPad with a keyboard. So if the iPad's mobile, pretty much this. How many people use a desktop still today? A desktop machine, anyone? Okay, so a few of you, right? I mean, my sole machine is a laptop, and that's pretty much the mobile thing. Why is this not, there's a few of them now, but I mean, why is not pretty much all of them coming with a SIM card in them so that I can actually be online all the time? Because the other thing, and to the last presentation, everything happening in the cloud, I am downloading and uploading data all the time. I had my computer stolen 3 months ago. It didn't matter because nothing was on the damn machine. Everything was in the cloud. I had access to it. I just, I could remotely shut down the machine so that no one could get used to it, and I had everything that I needed. There was no backup. There was no continual sort of offline storage. I just had everything in the cloud. So the amount of data that we're consuming is only going to grow as more and more people, drift to that, and as we drift away from desktop machines, frankly, and it becomes so much more of that. In fact, I think in 2009, 1% of the of internet traffic was mobile. Then I think right now we're at 12% of the global internet traffic is mobile traffic, right? So if you look at that, it's just going to increase, and that line of mobile to non-mobile is going to blur to the point where there really is just, traffic, data, Wi-Fi, 4G, whatever it is data coming in and out of essentially a machine that Sun envisaged ages ago, which was a very simple screw-in dumb terminal that you would actually use, and everything else would exist in the cloud. So it's finally coming to date. I think that, hold on, there we go. If you look at the smartphone adoption rates, 58% of US teen mobile users own a smartphone, so the teens are even, 58%, that's approaching. I think that's going to increase massively too. 74% of adults have a smartphone to back up that same thing that I said before. I think Larry Page said recently on TV that the first computer is going to be a mobile device for most kids these days, and I think he's right. I think it isn't going to be the PC. I mean, how many of your kids play with your iPhone? It's becoming that kind of a different technology, different spin of how we do everything, and kids are going to be on the mobile device first, and then they'll actually have their laptops, and I would say that they're never going to actually have desktops, frankly. Different age groups are going to use their phones and their mobile devices, their tablets, differently. And that's something we have to always remember. They're always going to use it differently, each and every one of them, both demographically, both users, age-wise. They're always going to use the systems differently, and we have to be uniquely adapt to that different use. There's going to be an increase in bring your own device. I'm sure that's been spoken a lot about. The bring your own device side of things. We're an organization of 100 people. We have everything from Androids to iPhones to all over the place. And I think that the bring your own device is only going to increase. There's a really interesting company. I think the app's called Divide, which is a very interesting thing that I'm seeing, which is literally a lockdown version where so you can have a bring your own device, but you can actually still have the enterprise control of a essentially virtual phone within the phone. And I think that bring your own device is only going to increase. So you're going to see much more of these smartphones going and increasing. So the top activities on mobile, we talked about this in the last couple of presentations. The top activities on mobile, still text is a massive, massive part of that, 60%, 34% web, 30% email. That's going to shift, as always. It's going to keep shifting, and I think as you see that line blur, you're going to have more and more people. The text will reduce, I think. I mean, when I first moved over here from England, I used to text my wife all the time, well, my now wife, and I used to text her all the time. She's like, what the hell is this? And now everyone's using it. It's SMS is all over the place, but I think that will decrease. Web is always going to go up. Email is not going anywhere. Email is always going to be a component where people are involved and using their smartphones or email as to the last point that people checking their email from before they get up. I think someone said that some people will check their email 7 times before leaving their apartment in the morning on their smartphone. So I think that's it's a vast amount of addiction to that, and I think you'll probably find that most people's attention spans will dramatically reduce with that as well. Email's a really useful thing. Email is one of the most it's a push mechanism. So it's not passive, as in you don't have to go online to go find anything. Email is being pushed at you, the user. So you're seeing that you're actually, as a marketer, you can actually reach the user and bring them back and actually engage them. So it becomes that sort of the place where you can go and get a user back and bring them back to the site. But it's not the only thing. It's about being able to be platform agnostic across the whole thing. You're seeing an increase of, I think, from last year, 10% increase in email engagement. I think last year it was at 20% of that shift. Now 30%. Again, going to increase all the time. Video is becoming a massive part of online. Everyone's watching mobile. I never used to watch video on my cell phone. I do now. It's only becoming more increasing. I think what's really exciting to me is mobile shopping. That's where it's really happening. The point of sale is everywhere now. There is no single, place you can conduct a transaction with Square. You can conduct a transaction with other applications. It's become very easy to conduct a thing. I think eBay released something recently where they were saying that they were doing $275 per second of transactions. I mean, on their mobile device. So, I mean, just in a 5-second pause, you're looking at $1,000. I mean, that's an awful lot of transactions that are happening from the mobile device. I think they sell about 9,000 cars a week from their mobile app. So people uploading and actually people purchasing. I mean, it's a crazy amount that's being conducted online, and I think commerce is really where the growth is, where you're going to see everything. It's just the mobile payment industry as a whole is growing. The 90%, one of the things to really realize is that 89% of mobile apps are free to download, and apps are really what draw people to a platform a lot of the time, right? It's the apps that you want to be able to use, and sometimes exist on Android, sometimes exist on iPhone. The apps are really a very big draw factor, and there's a hell of a lot of them, but they work very much on the aspect of being free and upgrading the user to a payment model if they can, if they're not supported by ad revenue. These are the apps. People are installing them. I forget the number. Some average number on iPhone installs are something like 120-odd apps per user, which is just, I mean, that's an awful lot of data that people are trying to find the apps and install onto their phones so that they can actually use them. So the apps that people download, they're going to change. The trends change. I mean, obviously, I'm sure everyone knows about sort of the Google Maps aspect of the new iOS release. What's really driving this adoption, right? Well, it's the access to the apps. It's the access to the data too. So for our customers, we track an awful lot of data, the big data aspect, right? We track the frequency, the time of day, and this is across platform, right? This isn't just in app or on phone. It's about knowing when a user is conducting commerce, when a user is playing games, when a user is watching video. All of this data we're collecting for our customers so that we can make it actionable and make it so that we can actually push that through. So if you think about a lot of the marketers in history have always looked at demographic data. It's like, where do they live? What's their household income? All of this kind of data that they can actually use. It's difficult. It's an old style kind of data, and frankly is not as effective as what you can actually get from psychographic data. So the data of knowing that a user consumes certain things, knowing that a user looks at handbags in the $2,000 range on eBay, but only ever purchases ones in the $300 range, it's much more effective data than knowing that they live in zip code 10014 with this household income. Because the user is you're inferring that data from that user's actual interactions. And so we're taking that data so that we can actually make that happen, but also you're seeing that the app stores are pushing products that are most trending, right? The app that's trending the most. They're selecting them, they're curating them, they're getting them out there. Those are the products that are being pushed out. And there's so many apps because it can be easy to sort of develop those and get them out. So that's really what's driving the adoption. So how do you build a really lasting relationship with your consumer, right, with the user? So that's what we do at Sell-Through. We collect and generate the data, analyze the behavior so that we can create targeted messages. When my dad was a greengrocer in England, which is, for the American side, is a deli that sells fruit and vegetables only, right? And he knew every single customer that walked in the door. And if he didn't know them, he got to know them immediately. And he made sure that they remembered him. And that enabled him to be competitive with the supermarkets that came in from America in the 80s into England. And he managed to remain competitive with them to the point where they wouldn't actually sell fruit and vegetables. And it was because he had the brand loyalty of his customers, and he had that interaction and that one-to-one consumption, one-to-one relationship. That's what we don't have in the digital world right now. That's what we don't have on mobile. We don't have on the web. We don't have in app. We don't have on tablet. It's because it is a digital world, and it's very hard to have that relationship. So that's where it's really coming down to, is how do you create that relationship? And you create that relationship by making sure that user is looked after, making sure that they're getting the most relevant content, the most relevant information at the click of a button as easy as possible. The consumer is bombarded with information right now, and it's about customizing all of that data and personalizing every interaction, especially on mobile. When people come to a website, and if it doesn't even load quickly, then they're going to move on. And the reason they move on is because it's not relevant, because the site wasn't quick enough. That's why Google used it as a massive PageRank score when they were looking at indexing sites. It's like if it didn't pop up, then you weren't relevant to the user because you weren't fast enough. And so on mobile, that's an even bigger problem. So customers have to be able to get their, the brands out there have to have fast websites, they have to have mobile-friendly websites, and they need to be able to push that out there so that they can, when a user goes to the site, it's immediate and they get going and they can get that data. So the bounce rates are much higher on mobile if they're slow. So again, more of the data side, more speed, as it were. It's about minimizing the click stream of the user to get to conversion. And that's what it's really about. So if that user's trying to get to this information, you want to get them there as quickly as possible. You don't want multitudes of page views between that data set. And knowing the data of what they're using, what they've consumed in the past, is how you can drive that and get them to the right content quickly and efficiently. So knowing that they're a Packers fan, that you can put that content right there when they come to the site, rather than having to click a couple of links to get to it. You're able to customize it. So again, it's an awful lot of data. These apps, everyone is sending this data back over the carrier network. It's only going to increase, and it's the future of how we're going to do that. And so when it comes down to sort of closing remarks, as it were, understanding the consumer is key. Understanding your consumer, it's the consumer of the content. They're consuming brands, content, e-commerce, or everything happening on their mobile device all the time. That's what's going to help you distinguish yourselves and understand that what their needs are, and how you can create and recognize the consumers as actual individuals, so that you can create a loyalty and a customer loyalty and maximize that ARPU for your customers, out of your customers, so that you can really have a very long-lasting lifetime value of those users. And that's by really providing the data sets and making the access to that data as easy as possible. Seamless transition to Wi-Fi, creating that kind of aspect, creating a ease of use for your users is the way to sort of really amaze them and get your customers to really be able to engage with everything they need as quickly as possible. And that's everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you.